You can learn many things from children. How much patience you have, for instance. Franklin P. Jones, American writer and humorist. All right, welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, so I was supposed to have a guest on and we had to delay some things, just got in the way. Life happens, no big deal. Show must go on. So what I did was I went on Twitter and I said, "All right, my guest canceled on me." I said, "What do I talk about tomorrow?" Because I try to prepare ahead of time, and I got some responses, a few, and so I was like, "All right, well, let's dig into them." Well, I don't want to dig into them, but let's talk about them real quick, briefly. I think I can kind of go through all of them. I mean, since I asked and people did take the time to respond, why I should, and so I will. So here we go. Here's what some of the things that I got yesterday. All right. So I said had a scheduled guest lined up for tomorrow, and they unfortunately need to delay until next week. What should I discuss on the podcast tomorrow? Your chair ignoring the board. So that's related to some issues here in the Libertarian Party of Florida. Um, and there's some disagreement going on. And I'm couching my words very carefully because I am actually now on the Libertarian Party of Florida Executive Committee. So it would not be wise for me to now publicly go and talk about things. It's a little different because I'm a voting member now. It's kind of like being on a jury, you want to make sure that you're, not, going out there and talking to a bunch of other people and getting their opinions, and you're focusing on what's being presented in and I say like jury, I don't mean like nobody's on trial. Okay, folks. Just saying like there's a similarity there. Like, you kind of got to keep some distance from, y- you know, keep your mouth shut basically and let things play out. So that's what I'm doing. I'm keeping my mouth shut now. And no big deal. That's what it is. What else? What season 3 of The Wire tells us about drug decriminalization and crime? Here's the fun thing. I've actually not really seen The Wire. I mean, I think I've watched a few episodes. Here's the rub. I work 8 to 5, roughly somewhere around there, and sometimes longer, sometimes earlier, sometimes a little bit shorter, whatever, but basically, I have a 40 hour, and then I podcast, and then I have a 5-year-old, and I have a wife, and I have my yard work that I got to do. So there's a lot going on. I'm the chair of the party here in Duval. I'm now on the executive committee for the Libertarian Party of Florida. So I've got a lot going on. So I don't generally get much time to watch TV. And unfortunately, sometimes during the day when I might have time, my son is or was, at least before he started school, he was with me. So I had to be careful about what I watched because I don't want him seeing certain things. They're just not age appropriate. And so the only time left for me is to watch it late at night. And the problem with doing that is that I'm already somewhere between 4 and 6 hours of sleep a night. That's generally my routine. Not on purpose. It just ever since my sleep has been trash ever since I became a dad. Just the way it is. And so if I binge, like if I start watching a show, especially one that's older, I'll tend to binge, and then I get even less sleep, and then it's really rough. So I haven't seen it, nor will I get to anytime soon. So that's unfortunate. I can't talk about The Wire. I've heard great things about it. And by the way, when it was actually airing, I believe it was on HBO, like way back in the day, and I didn't have HBO, so I couldn't watch it then. Can't watch it now. So who knows? Maybe I'll go to my grave and never have seen the full series of The Wire. We'll try to fix that. What else we got? Colorado BS. Well, again, like I'm being very careful about what I say about affiliates. This is related to Libertarian Party stuff. I'm not in Colorado. In fact, I'm not even on that side of the country. And I've actually been dialing down. Anybody that's following me on Twitter probably is noticing that I'm dialing back a little bit on talking about Libertarian Party infighting and drama and problems and issues and things like that. And the reason I mean, I never talked about it a whole lot to begin with. I mean, I engaged, but now I'm engaging even less and less and less. And the reason isn't because like I'm so disenfranchised with the party, I'm gonna quit and I'm gonna rage quit and post a video of me talking trash about the party. None of that's gonna happen. All it is I'm trying to grow a particular brand here. I've got a good show going. I've got a brand that I'm building, and I don't want to be sucked into just arguing about basically the same things. Now, they're new situations, but they're basically the same things. Like, hey, this person didn't follow the rules. They did this thing. Now people are upset, so on and so forth. Right. So I'm actually dialing back because I've noticed that I'm just kind of arguing with the same people and talking about this kind of the same things. And I find that boring. I cannot build a brand. Liberty Dad brand is not going to be about party infighting. And so one of the ways to do that is, to help the show is to be mindful about what I talk about on social media. And and that helps me, modify the algorithm and whatnot. I think I saw something just the other day. I think it was just this morning, actually. I guess Mark Cuban went on. He was on. I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. Um, the Comedy Central comedian, or that's what he was known for, Jon Stewart. So he was with Jon Stewart, and they were trashing Elon Musk and talking about like all these right wingers that are coming at Mark Cuban, and and Elon Musk responds. He's like, "Look, if you engage with right wingers, that's what you're going to see in your feed. That's how the algorithm works." Right? What you see. I mean, we've seen other jokes where people are like, "Why do I see so much nudity?" And people are like, "Well, maybe you should stop searching for it, right? Or stop looking at it." You know? And so what you feed, what you engage in on social media is what tends to pop up in your feed. And so then consequently, when I go looking for things to talk about on the show, if I'm just basically engaging with other libertarians about libertarian stuff, then that limits the scope of what I see, and so then it makes it more difficult for me to find good stuff to talk about on the show. So, and this show is not branded to be Libertarian Party, insider baseball. So that's what's going on. And then also it's another affiliate. And it's hard to really know what's going on in an affiliate that you're not a part of, especially when they're on the other side. Like I would be, well, I don't even know what's going on in Georgia. Right. And they're like right next door. So I can't talk about that stuff. But, if I see something, occasionally I might chime in. I'm not pulling back entirely, but it's all strategic. So there's no, don't anybody go out there and be like, oh, DL's quitting. Nope, nope. I'm just trying to follow something that I want to pursue. Very specific. What else we got? Porgs. Honestly, I don't know what that is. Do I got I don't know which one of my buttons is the crickets, but I would push that button if I did. Otherwise, I don't know. Is it this one? Nope. There it is. There we go. Louder. Okay, so that's what I got to say about pork. Sorry. Why the assassination attempt has been memory hold and latest development on citizens investigation. That's kind of interesting. I don't know that I could do a whole show on that. I don't follow all the citizens investigations, but I think citizens that are interested in it should. And there's been a lot. I've seen things kind of come across my feed where people are digging up all these different videos from different angles and different citizens had put out there. Some of them were some of them were investigative journalists, if you will. Some of them are just people that were standing there and like, that's weird, and they have their phone, just like, isn't this weird? Why is there a guy over here, you know and so I hope something does come out that tells us a little bit more. If there's something seedy going on, then we should know about it. As far as why the assassination attempt was memory hold, well, here, look, when the attempt was made on President Trump. Like, one of the things that was really popular for a lot of people to say was, he has just won the election. And I was right there with him. I was like, man, I was like, I mean, how do you lose an election now? Like, dude just got shot at. Like, and that's not acceptable. And that's, in terms of politics, that is like a gold mine. Like, but I don't think the Trump campaign really ran with it so well. I mean, they did initially. But more importantly, the establishment that he's up against, the Democrats, the media, and all that good stuff. Um, they did a phenomenal job of changing the conversation. I mean, you want to talk about an Overton window being shifted, and it's not technically an Overton window, but for lack of better phrasing, if you want to talk about something like that, man, just watch what they did. And they turned on a dime. I mean, we literally went from Biden is too old and senile. Trump, I almost said Gump, maybe. President Trump gets shot to all of a sudden, hey, Biden's going to step down. Rah, rah, rah. This is the greatest thing for the party. He's doing such a good job. Like, this is great for America. Not we, but like the Democrats and those who were supporting him. And they turned on a dime on that. And then they were like, and, President or Vice President Kamala Harris, she's going to run for president. And like, no, we went from nobody liking her in the first place to now, again, the Democrats and those supporting the Democratic candidate, they turned on a dime. I mean, if you go look at the accounts for like Harry Sisson, I think is his name, and that other Chris Maury, I think is his name, like those two like 22-year-old guys, and they were like, Biden's not too old. He's still awesome. He's great. He's sharp as ever. Look how he took out Trump in the debate. I mean, he was just like, it was like a really, if you didn't know any better, you might think that he was a really well-paid cheerleader. I'm just saying. Like, by the way that he just came out, he was just like everything. Like, Biden could do no wrong. I mean, it was like puppy love. You know, like when I was in my 20s and I met a girl, any girl that I liked, and we started dating, and it was like, oh, she's so great. Like she picks her nose. Like that's great. Like everything that somebody does when you're in puppy love is just fabulous. And that's what these two guys were with Biden. And then all of a sudden he steps down. That was great. And then all of a sudden Kamala steps up. That was great. I mean, they turned on a dime. And they basically shifted the conversation. And I don't think that the Republicans have been able to keep up. And the reason, what, 2 episodes ago, I said, because they keep fighting a culture war that they're not going to win. And some of my libertarian peers are doing likewise. And I think, my opinion at this particular time, unless something changes, Kamala Harris may actually win the presidency. So I think the assassination attempt was memory hold, to get her elected, and they did a phenomenal job of it. So credit where due. What else we got? The fact that local races matter more than national, also that third parties will get blamed hard this election for the other side winning. Yes, local elections, absolutely. I mean, in context, in many ways, the local elections are more important, right? Jacksonville has a school board election coming up. We have 4 seats that are open, and we have like 8 or 9 people that are running. And so that's going to impact me tremendously, because what kind of decisions will these people be part of making for the school system here in Jacksonville? And my son is a part of the school system. And so what happens, right? Like, that's going to affect me greatly, much more than, you know, what the president decides to do, whether he decides to maybe say, give money to another country. Well, the government spends money left and right. At this point, it's all a wash. So yeah, there's going to be more of a direct effect. I mean, it all affects us at the end of the day, but local elections affect us greatly. I just went to city council and spoke against a bill that they were trying to pass. Had they passed that bill, there would have been a direct impact here in Jacksonville. Maybe not to me directly, because the bill was about hate speech, and it really was tacking on to, adding penalties for hate speech that were accompanied. Well, let me rephrase it the other way. Um, when there was violent crime committed, then they would tack on hate speech penalties if there was hate speech associated with those crimes, right? So that's not really going to directly affect me because I'm not committing crimes, and I mean, depending on who you talk to, I'm not engaging in hate speech. So, but they do affect us. And so it is important. And yes, third parties will get blamed. We might not get blamed nearly as much this year. Depends on if RFK stays in the race. Now, there's been some rumors that he's been reaching out to the Harris campaign about a cabinet position, and so I don't know if that's entirely true. I don't know if it's old school, old news, or if it's something he's actively pursuing at this particular time. But if he were to drop out of the race and in some way join forces with Kamala Harris, then we'll be back at third parties potentially getting blamed. If he stays in the race and he pursues it, then I think he will take the brunt of that, because the fact of the matter is, whether I like it or not, he's a Kennedy, so he has a way bigger name than the Libertarian Party because he's a Kennedy, and he has way more money, so he can do a lot more things, buy a lot more access and whatnot. Now he's still limited because he got in the game late, so he's not in. He's not in all on the ballot in all 50 states. And that hurts tremendously. But and that's only by virtue of him not like being part of a party that has been working to ensure that they have ballot access over time. That's primarily what it is. When you're independent like that, ballot access is a very uphill battle. So a lot of this is going to depend on what happens with the RFK campaign. And then, I mean, some people will probably still blame third party. They'll say, "Oh, because they like to blame us." It's a paradox. On one hand, we're totally irrelevant, right? People will say, "Well, third parties don't matter. It's a wasted vote." Blah blah blah. And then after the vote, when after the election, when it doesn't go their way, and we've in some way disrupted it, like they're pointing the finger, they're like, "You third parties, you caused so and so to lose the race." And like, well, wait a minute, hold on. I thought we were irrelevant and the votes don't matter, right? Well, which is it? Take a pick. I don't know. So, I mean, I do know, but I'm just saying, like when I'm responding to people, I'm like, well, I don't know. You decide. You figure this out. It's your problem. I know where I stand on this, and I'm pretty sure I'm accurate. So that's those are all the comments that I got. I appreciate everybody chiming in and giving me some things to talk about. But I have some other things to talk about as well. So let's see, what else do we got? Let's see here. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Department of Education. So this is interesting. So let me pull this up, and this will be. So speaking of the Department of Education, a moment ago, let's see. I saw this and I thought it was interesting, and I don't have it quite so queued up, but I will get to it right away. Won't take me very long at all. And let's see here. Do do. Give me just a second. This is the one thing that I was not quite 100% prepared on, but that's okay because I am now ready. And there we go. Okay. So let me scroll down a little bit so you can see the before, what was being talked about here. So the libs of TikTok quoting Trump saying, "One of my first acts, I want to close up the Department of Education." And they said, "Yes, fire, 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 fire." And I agree. That'd be great. Be awesome. Now I have my doubts because we are talking about the same Trump who was in office already and did not deliver on a lot of promises. Okay. We're not going to hash out the argument why now, but we are talking about that same Trump. So I'm a little skeptical. Are we really going to shut down the Department of Education? And then this David Levitt says they don't want children to learn how to read and write. Is that so? Like that the reason that people know how to read and write is because of the Department of Education? Well, he's quoted by the ever so awesome Tom Woods, who says nobody could read and write before 1979 question mark. And if you don't know that date, that is the date, that is the year the Department of Education was established. And so it's a good point. Like our country, like if you go back to like 1776, like they wrote, back in those days, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. We have the Federalist Papers, not necessarily all in that year, but back 200 some years ago. They wrote things and there was no Department of Education. And so then I want to go further and I want to point out, I'm like, well, how did people like Booker T. Washington educate blacks post slavery? Now, if you haven't read his book, Up from Slavery, I encourage it. But he describes in one of his multiple chapters, actually, um, how he started a school in 1882. So this is a long time before we get to the Department of Education. And not only did he set up a school, he he reached out and said, "Hey, if you're black, whether you're a young person or you're an adult and you want an education, come here, you're going to get one. But there are some strings. You got to help us build the school first." Like they literally excuse me, they literally built their own school before they had a school to teach people. And even then they had problems. Like he details about how they had to build their own kiln so that they could make bricks. So they couldn't even afford to buy bricks. They had to make their own bricks. Then after they made their bricks, then they could actually build the school. But they failed like 3 or 4 times with the kiln. Like it kept failing on them. And so it's interesting, and you're like, well, wait a minute. How was he able to educate people in 1882? And remind you, 1882 was not 2024, nor was it 1979. Okay. And what I mean by that is 2024, way better for the black community than 1979. 1979, way better for the black community than 1882. Let's just say it like this. You didn't need an N-word pass in 1882, and you kind of didn't need one in 1979 either. Okay? Does that tell you exactly that help seal how different it was back then? And yet they were able to Booker T. Washington was able to educate his community. Another question I have is, how did the M Street School, a Washington, D.C. based school for black students, and most of them were from like middle class, lower middle class homes, right? Like they were not wealthy. How did they produce such high quality graduates between the years roughly between the years 1870 and 1955? In fact, let me show you. Got a little graphic here I want to show you. There it is. So here's the M Street School. This is a picture from, I think it's 1986, I believe. So this is a 1986 picture of it. But this school was actually built much earlier. So, but this school was underfunded, and it was one of like 4 schools, I think. And the schools for the white kids were not underfunded, as you can imagine. And yet they delivered high quality graduates. In fact, let me read you from this website here. This is a very, I think you're going to find this very interesting here. So this comes from the website called historicsites.dcpreservation.org. Okay. So I'm going to transition over there. All right. So what does it say? M Street High School, which is now known as Perry School. It's changed names a couple times. M Street High School was one of the nation's first high schools for African Americans and represents an important development of Washington's education system. Founded in 1870 as a preparatory high school for colored youth, M Street High School navigated multiple makeshift locations until 1890 when Congress earmarked $112,000 for the construction of a dedicated building. The school ultimately found its permanent home at 128 M Street Northwest in a red brick structure. That's the building I showed you, designed by the Office of the Building Inspector. Its facade is adorned with colonial accents, and the interior includes a rectangular floor plan. Under the visionary leadership of its principals, M Street High School defied societal norms and provided a rigorous curriculum that surpassed the offerings of many white schools. surpassed. In 1870, I'm sorry, 1890, when they got established. You could say the N word back then. You probably could lynch people and get away with it. Okay. It's not acceptable, but I'm just saying things were way different back then. You could be racist. You could say, we're not giving any money to black people. Figure it out. No help for you, N word person, right? Like you could say that and get away with it. Nobody would cancel you. Okay. And there was no Department of Education. The curriculum was meticulously organized into tracks: academic, scientific, technical, and business, offering a diverse array of subjects. M Street High School graduates were not merely students, they were pioneers, earning spots in leading colleges and universities across the nation despite the systemic challenges of segregation. So, despite all the things that were against the black community in the late 1800s, early 1900s, for some 85 years, they managed to deliver high quality education that surpassed white schools. And they didn't have a Department of Education. They didn't have one nationally, and they didn't have one in whatever states or locales that they had, cities, communities. There was no governing body that said, you have to teach this curriculum. There wasn't anybody that said, are you an educator? How many times you heard that? People be like, are you an educator? What do you know about educating? Like, well, I don't know anything, but I know that you guys suck. That's what I do know. So I'm not buying this notion that if you want to shutter the Department of Education, that somehow you just don't want kids to read and write. Get out of here with that nonsense. That's just crazy talk. All right, let's see what else. The truth is, Department of Education has really only delivered poorer results than when schools were on their own. The schools did better, especially for minority and disenfranchised students. Like you did better. Now that doesn't mean that every single poor black kid, got a great education. No, there were certainly people that didn't have, they didn't get a good education for any number of reasons, right? But the point being, overall, on net balance, the majority of them didn't, they were able to successfully teach and graduate students who had a high caliber of education and intelligence. That was possible. And just throwing this out there, they didn't have a lot of violence in schools either. So I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe the Department of Education, if Mom's Demand really wants to demand some, so less violence in schools, maybe get rid of maybe get on board of the shutter the Department of Education train. I mean, if you really mean it, maybe we need to look at everything as a whole and say, let's go back to a time when there wasn't such violence of any kind. I mean, when I went to school in the 1990s, I went through metal detectors. And let me tell you a very quick story. I went sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. I went to a Catholic high school. Oh, I'm sorry, Catholic. Okay. I went to a Catholic junior high school, right? And I graduated and I was going to go to public high school in Dayton, Ohio. And the neighbor girl who was already a year ahead of me, and she was in the school, she was in Meadowdale High School. And she said, look, Daniel, when you get here, mind your mouth. She said, fights here are not like they used like you're used to. She said, fights that you see have like a black eye, maybe somebody goes home embarrassed, stuff like that, right? She said, fights here, they end up with puddles of blood and the ambulance being called. And she was right. When I got there, I saw some fights and I was like, wow. It was wild. There was one guy, He reached down, he grabbed some dude's leg, just yanked it out from underneath him. That's all he did. The guy fell down, hit his head on the concrete, and they had to call the ambulance. Okay. This is in the 1990s when we had a Department of Education. Now, were there fights and stuff like that? Were there technically violence in schools back then? Yeah, there was. But was there violence on the scale that we have today? No, there wasn't. No. There were schoolyard fights for sure. Somebody got beat up. And I'm sure that you could dig up history and say, okay, well, maybe this one person got killed or something like that. Like, possible. But again, at the scale that we're seeing it now, not at all. No way. So mom's demand, if you want to demand something, why don't you demand an entirely different education system, one that actually delivers? How about that? All right, folks, let's see. Do I have that video? I don't have the video yet. I'm going to try to get it up here because I wanted to play an intermission. Had a lot going on this morning. Again, we are we're trying to make some changes here. So let me see if I can't get this going ultra quickly here. So give me just a second here, and I think I can pull this up. And and we're gonna do this. Let's see here. Uh, let's see. Is it working? Is it gonna work? All right. Almost ready. And then it'll be it'll be more ready in the future. So I apologize, folks, but we will have this down. So let's
Farrah Butler is a busy Atlanta mom who occasionally lets 3-year-old Oliver play on an iPad.
When I need a break.
That is not the video. That is not the video. So give me a second. I will have the right video. We had some settings here that were not correct. So we will do this again. And
if no candidate receives over 50%, then the top two candidates head to a runoff. Now we know this race will head to a runoff.
New focus on the influence of libertarians in Georgia's Senate race. There's another player in the mix.
Voters deserve a chance to have their voices heard, and they shouldn't have to be lumped into one box or the other and have to be shamed into voting into two parties.
These two major parties aren't addressing their pain.
The CBO themselves said the Inflation Reduction Act wouldn't actually reduce inflation. Are you actually reading the bills, or are you just taking Chuck Schumer's word for it when you vote on these things? We obviously need to audit the Fed. Once people get a little bit more education about what the Federal Reserve does, they'll want to see it ended. We claim to be the light of liberty unto the world, and if we seek to hold that mantle, we have to fix our broken immigration system. Big Pharma is subsidized to the tune of billions of dollars a year by our government. The only thing Democrats and Republicans can agree on is how to spend your money out of thin air and devalue our dollar. We need to bring market forces into healthcare that are going to lower the prices. I believe that we need true justice reform at every level, from the police to the courts to the prosecutors. And we need to do away with mandatory minimums. We need to do away with qualified immunity so that law enforcement can be held accountable in a court of law just like any of us. And that's something that I fought for. I've gotten tear gas in the streets while I protest for justice reform. Don't take politicians' advice for your healthcare. Take your doctor's advice. Why is that the radical idea and not the rational idea? I want to take power out of the hands of government and return it to each and every one of you, because that's where it resides. If not voted was actually on the ballot, they would win nearly every election in this country. Most of the people who vote represent themselves as independent, so it's important that we have voices that are independent of the two parties on stage. I want you to be able to start a small business. I want you to have control over your own body, and I want you to be able to live your life as your authentic self in peace. I'm Chase Oliver, a candidate for president, and I approve this message.
awesome. All right. So I'm going to be trying to offer different intermission clips from time to time, candidates, whatever. So if you are a candidate, a libertarian candidate specifically, and you have an ad, reach out, let me know, because I want to play your stuff. If you have a business and you want to collaborate with me, reach out, we'll talk. Okay. But I'm going to start promoting some things here because I am working diligently to make the show better and better and better so that this is the go-to show for all kind of information. All right. So recently I saw a video from CBS News and it was very interesting. That was the one that started playing when I got things a little bit mixed up there. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it's something that I can identify with. So let me go ahead and play this clip and then we're going to talk about it. And so this is talking about screen time. There was a study that came out and said, hey, if your child has too much screen time, it can affect their behavior, which I've personally experienced. And so we'll talk about some of my personal experience and then some ideas and thoughts that I had about it. So here we go.
Farrah Butler is a busy Atlanta mom who occasionally lets 3-year-old Oliver play on an iPad.
When I need a break, mainly in the mornings when I'm trying to unload the dishwasher, and in the afternoons when I'm trying to cook dinner.
Do you try to limit screen time with Oliver on the iPad?
Of course, I try. Yes, as best as I can.
It's hard.
It is hard. It is hard, especially when you're a mom. You just need a few minutes of a break.
Some say moms and dads are using tablets as a digital pacifier to soothe children as they cope with parenting challenges. But at what cost? A new study finds preschool-age children logging 75 minutes or more of daily screen time displayed more anger and frustration as they got older and had trouble regulating emotions, which often resulted in parents giving them even more screen time by age 5. The author of the study, Carolyn Fitzpatrick, says she conducted it during the pandemic.
So it might allow parents to immediately avoid a temper tantrum. But in the long term, repeated use of this kind of strategy does not allow children to develop strong internal emotion regulation skills.
What's his reaction when you take the iPad away?
He is not happy. He is not a fan of getting the pad taken away at all.
Butler, who has 3 children, says she and her husband briefly took tablets away from their kids and may do it more often.
We saw their behavior improve all around, and they didn't really seem to mind too much. They found other things to do with their time. So all in all, it was a positive experience.
So how much screen time should a young child get? Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends for preschool children 2 and up only up to an hour a day, and it should be educational in nature. Major?
Janet Shamlian, thank you.
All right. I actually agree, even though I was being a little bit snarky with the American Pediatrics Association. I do agree that you should limit your screen time for your children. Now, if you watched my show, I believe it was number 317, I had Jeremy Kaufman on with Dad Talk. And one of the things that did come up was the issue of screen time. And he pointed out something very interesting. He said that he does not view all screen time as the same. And I agree. I think there is a difference between video games, even differences within video games. For instance, Minecraft could be different than, a shoot 'em up game and first person shooter. Sorry, I'm old, whatever. And it's also, those, games are different than saying just watching just shows, just a show that's like no educational value versus a show that is of educational value. So I think there is a difference, but that doesn't necessarily mean like, hey, you can have 5 hours of screen time as long as we split it up among different types of screen time. But I do think that it would be wise for parents to remember that. Here's the thing. Parenting is tough, but you signed up for it like many billions of people before you. So get over it, figure it out. And yeah, I mean, there are times I work from home, and when my son was here all day long, it was tough because he would come in and he would be like, Dad, what are we going to do next? And I'm like, we are not going to do anything because I am working. You need to go play. Right. And it's tough because as a 5-year-old, he can only entertain himself for so long. Now, if I were to give him a screen, he could be entertained for hours. And that's not good. In fact, my own experience with that is that I seem to have noticed before this study came out, before I read anything about it, I just observed that if he had like, say, 2 hours of screen time, like especially 2 hours direct, the next day, he would seem to have a bit of an attitude, just be grumpy, just like, dude, did you not get enough sleep? What's going on here? And I just noticed, I eventually noticed a trend. And it was hard to notice it because he doesn't normally get a lot of screen time in the first place. And so it just happens occasionally. You'd have that rainy day where I'm really busy and he can't go outside and play and he's limited and he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have any siblings. So what's he to do? So maybe we allow him to, a little bit more than usual. Maybe a car ride, there's various times when somehow he gets a little bit more screen time. And so, I was able to observe a little bit. And so the question is like, what do you do? Because then they come and they want your attention, right? And you're trying to do something like that mom said, I'm trying to unload the dishwasher. Well, there's many different strategies that you can employ. You could have them help you load the dishes, or unload the dishwasher. And depending on their age, maybe you have them only grab the spoons or something like that. Um, but let me show you something that I did literally just yesterday. And so, not yesterday, but the day before, on Tuesday, I went and I spoke at city council. And by the way, throw that up there. You're welcome. Thank you, Liberty Dad, for going to City Hall to voice opposition for the hate crime bill. You're very welcome. But I did that Tuesday, and my wife was busy working, and this was kind of out of the ordinary, right? On the spur of the moment. And so I was like, hey, I need to go to city council. I need to speak against this bill. I'm the chair of the party, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, okay. And then she's like, do you care if he has a little bit of extra screen time? And I was like, probably not, because the way that we normally do things is we gauge how much screen time he gets, largely based on what he's been doing that day. So if he goes to, let's say he goes to basketball practice on a Saturday morning, and then after basketball practice, then he goes to um, robotics. He's got a little robotics class that he goes to. And then let's say after that, he goes to a birthday party. And then after that, we maybe go out to eat or something like. So maybe he's been out and about interacting with other people, kids, adults, getting some sunshine, running around, getting some of that energy out all day long. And then he comes home. Sometimes we're like, you know what? If you want to spend an hour, hour and a half watching some TV, or maybe playing some video games, we're a little bit more flexible. Okay. But again, sometimes it just happens where maybe that doesn't happen. So Tuesday, he comes home from school and he's doing some things around the house, playing, doing whatever. And then I get ready to leave to go to city council. And my wife's like, hey, I'm still busy. Do you care if he watches some TV? And I said, yeah, that's fine. I think it'll be fine. He's been at school all day. He's been, interacting with other kids. Let's give it a go and see what happens. And so he ended up having about, I think, 2 hours. Went fine that night. Woke up the next morning, and man, he was a grump all day. And then I was like, okay, maybe he's just a little tired. Maybe it's just because he's just started school. It's a new schedule. He's not used to being in school all day long, And so maybe he just needs, some extra time. So then he goes to school. We have a little bit of a complication, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to say altercation. I want to make it sound like it was greater. He just was, a little bit more feisty than normal on the way out to school. He goes to school. He comes back. He's still in this mood. So I'm like, God, this is not good. And so then I'm like, I'm like, all right, well, maybe that was too much screen time, especially with the new schedule and all that good stuff. So I decided last night, I was like, all right, no TV tonight. Let's take a break, like a total. And so he went to his jujitsu class, and he comes back and he's like, all right, Dad, what are we going to do? And I was like, I'm like trying to do some things. And I'm like, I don't know. And then he's like, well, he's bored now. He wants to do something. And I told him no more TV tonight. No TV at all yesterday. Right. So now, like, what do I do? So then all of a sudden he gets this idea. He's like, Dad, I need a box. A box for what? And he's like, well, I'm going to make a Ghostbuster backpack. Oh, you are now. And so then I decide, maybe I'll help him out. So I go out, we find a box, and we find some other materials, and we make this kind of like makeshift. It doesn't look great backpack that he can wear. So let me show you this picture, because I'm kind of proud of something that I threw together at the last moment. So here he is with his backpack. Okay. And I'm going somewhere with this. I promise you. We're gonna go somewhere with this. So here he is with his backpack, and you can see it's this big, huge box, and he's got straps. So all I did was I took a box, and I took a backpack that we happen to have, and I put it inside the box, and I cut some holes so I can feed the straps through. I took a rope, and I grabbed some some PVC piping and some piping foam that we had to wrap around it, and I got it all like put together. And it took me about a half an hour. It's about a half an hour to put all this together. You can see he's pretty happy. He's pretty happy about this Ghostbuster thing. So then he decides he needs to quote unquote fix it. So then he goes over to his art table and he's like, Dad, I'm going to color this because it needs to be, this and that. And I'm going to do, okay, cool. You go right ahead. So then, and you don't see it, but on the back of it now, he's literally got these like red circles with lines through them. And he's got like these ghosts that he drew. So he drew some ghost, like no ghost. He drew a bunch of stuff on the back of it. And then he colored at least one side of it because he wanted it to be all black. So he took a black marker and, colored all of it. And so he spent another, I don't know, half hour doing that. Then he ran around the house the rest of the night shooting ghost, letting his imagination take over, having fun with this box that took me 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Right. And when it was bedtime, he took it upstairs. I was like, all right, that doesn't go in the shower. And so he's like, okay. And he had it in his room, sitting next to his bed. And we read him his book. He went to bed. He woke up this morning on his own at 6 a.m. and comes out of his room dressed with the backpack on. Running around the house, shooting at ghosts, talking about it. And now he's like, hey, Dad, we need, if you remember the movie Ghostbusters, they had the little block, the ghost holder. I don't know what it was called exactly, but they would slide it in front of him and hit a button and it would open up and suck the ghost in. So now he wants one of those. So now I told him today I would look around the house for something that would be suitable for that. And we would try to make that. Now, as you can see, I didn't put a lot of effort into this. And not because I'm a bad dad. It was kind of all of a sudden. And I was like, I don't know, I'm trying to scrap together materials that we have around the house. So I just kind of put this together. And so now he's got this backpack that he's quite happy with. And then he embellished he improved upon his own. And he is now, with my 1/2 hour of helping him out, he has probably spent a good couple of hours playing, running around the house, shooting ghosts, having a lot of fun, shooting at us, Daddy, I got you. He took his jump rope and was pretending that was like his little box and he was throwing that around. Right. So like a half an hour of my time gave him a couple of hours, which gave me a couple of hours. So yeah, parenting is hard. But again, you signed up for it and you've got to figure out how it's your job to help your child, and helping your child should not mean, and I'm going to be a bit judgy, throwing a tablet at them. You have to figure it out. Now, maybe this isn't your kid. Maybe your kid is something different, right? Like maybe your kid, maybe you can just take them outside and they'll play at, take them to the park and they'll swing while you can, bring your laptop and work off your laptop, whatever. I don't know. But you got to figure it out as a parent, whatever works for you. And I think it can be done. Right. And I think especially when the kids are younger, maybe not when they're really, really young, when they're like 3, probably a little bit harder. He's 5, so it's a little easier to kind of just give him a nudge and let his imagination take over. So those are my thoughts. I try to be very careful about giving parenting advice because I'm literally 5 years in. I don't know what I'm talking about. So, but anyway, just wanted to kind of talk about that. Last thing before we go, I want to tell you about some interesting things. I'm going to make some show updates. Number one update that I'm going to make here coming up Monday, doing this Monday. Number one, here in Florida, we have 6 amendments that are coming up on the ballot in November. So starting Monday, every Monday, I'm going to talk about one of those amendments. But kind of more importantly here, I'm going to start my grift. That's right, folks. I will be a grifter. I figured out, and I've been on social media, on X, I am able to set up for subscribers. So I'm going to set up an option for people to subscribe. $5. Talking to some people, that's the number we landed on. Now, the first question that you might have is, DL, are you just trying to get rich? Yes. Yes, I am. But more importantly, what I'm trying to do is deliver a better show. And it does come at a cost. It costs money to produce this show. It has cost me money the last 4 years. And I think now I'm at a point where I can start saying, hey, support me financially so that I can offset some of the cost and then deliver more. So what are some of the costs? I'm going to be upfront with people. news sites, studies, those things are not always easily acquired. Especially if it's a news site, if sometimes they're behind a paywall. Normally, I can get around it, but it does take a little bit more work. Sometimes, if I want to dig up an old story, very like maybe 20 years ago, those aren't so easily acquired necessarily. And so, if I remember a story or I remember hearing about something and I want to go dig back, or I want to go and dig up and say, okay, what were people talking about 20 years ago? Does that line up with what people are saying today? Let me go find out. So some of that information is very difficult to get, and it takes me a lot longer to get it. So if I have access to certain sites, I will be able to log in. I can create an account, a paid account, and that will give me access to some of this information so that I can bring you better information. Okay. Same thing with studies. So in the video we just saw, where they said, hey, a new study, I actually went to try to go and read the study because I do read these studies. And unfortunately, my first few searches came up empty. I was not able to find it. I think it's because it's a new study that was published like on the 12th of August. So it's only a couple of days old. It's behind a paywall. So I wasn't able to read it and identify, like my thoughts fully on the matter. So that's what some of the money would go for. There's video editing cost. So the software that I use when I do some video editing, it does have a subscription cost. Podcast hosting, and even editing, that also has a cost. So there are sites that will help you edit your make your sound quality better and all that. And I don't utilize those at the moment, but I do utilize some hosting and those costs. And they have features that I'm limited because I have some of the smaller tier subscriptions. So currently, I want to do better. I want to deliver more. I want to be able to say stream the show to Facebook or maybe some other sites as well. Right. I want to get it out there. And so these kind of things will help me. Now, what do subscribers get other than just a better show with more information? Well, if you're on Twitter or X, however you want to call it, you would get early thoughts. So I can actually tweet things specifically to subscribers. So if I've got a thought that I'm kind of working out in my mind, I can tweet it out and say, "Hey, tell me your thoughts on this," and we can kind of work it out together. We can interact. So in other words, there's more interaction with me. I will prioritize that interaction as well. So if I make a tweet that's public and I make a tweet that's to subscribers, when you're talking to me, you're going to get priority because you're paying for it. I'm also going to do a monthly private chat, and I might do more than one, but we'll start with one. We'll go from there. But a monthly private chat for subscribers only, where you can have a conversation with me. We can talk about things. You can, give me whatever feedback. You can give me ideas. We can just have a chat. You can just ask me my thoughts on different things. Whatever the case is, whatever you want to talk about, that's what we'll be doing. And then possibly more. I don't know what more is just yet. I'm willing to put out a lot, but I do need to start offsetting some of these costs, because I do put a lot of effort into this podcast. I get up at 5 a.m. So this morning, this show, everything that you just heard, I got up at 5 a.m. and I literally worked between 5 a.m. and let's call it 7. So I was back and forth doing some things, helping getting breakfast ready, helping my mother-in-law, getting my son ready for school, stuff like that. So I spend about 2 hours per episode. So this will go, not just making me rich and wealthy, which I imagine will be for a long, it'll take a while, but more importantly, it will help to improve the show, improve my ability to deliver a good show and a better show. Because ultimately, whatever I'm doing today on August 15th, 2024, come next year, let's just say January 1st, 2025, I want there to be a major difference. Like, wow, that show is really improved. And I want to make sure that I'm delivering to those who are spending their time with me. So that's what I'm doing. Now, will the show still be free to watch? Absolutely. I will still keep doing a free show. And the only difference will be I will start adding benefits for people who want to financially support me and the show. And we're going to try to do better and better and better so that, you have a great show to watch. All right, so let's see. I got another comment in here I wanted to put out. I meant to get this one out earlier, but I forgot. So I apologize to that Liberty lady. But on the topic of schools, the Duval Dems put out a voter card. Sorry. Yeah. The Duval Dems put out a voter card listing candidates not to vote for certain people because they back Moms for Liberty. Politics is a full contact sport. So, yep, the Duval Dems are out there. They have their agenda. I have my agenda being the chair of the Libertarian Party here in Duval County. I have my agenda as Liberty Dad on this podcast. So there's, we got to get out there and keep fighting, and we got to promote who we can. So if you're a candidate, going back to my earlier comment, if you are a candidate, a libertarian candidate, and you have a video, I mean, try not to make it too junky. I mean, I'll have some leeway here. The better, right? But reach out, let me know, and I will promote your stuff. Or if you just happen to have a flyer, maybe I can do something for you. We'll see. All right, but reach out. Anyway, that's my show for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed it, found it informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, again, 7:30 a.m. from now on for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer, my Rumble channel. You can go to youtube.libertydad.com or rumble.libertydad.com. While you're there, if you're not watching live, please let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, I want you to remember that if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people, and your product, if you're, yes, I'm getting tongue tied here. Sorry. If you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I can do this. I can say my own tagline. Have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now,